Welcome, everyone, to What the Fiction. I'm Marie-Claire Gould, your host, and with me is my co-host for this wonderful topic, Missy.
Hello. I'm so excited to be talking about this.
Yes, we are going to be covering a deep dive into Turning Red and how it relates to the Wild Woman archetype. This should be a lot of fun. And what we like to do on this show and all of my other shows that I've ever done is talk about why fiction works, right? Especially why it works for me, Missy. When we explore fiction, we're really into why it speaks to us and then resonates in a particular way. And when we both watched Turning Red, that is exactly what we experienced. And it wasn't just because of the fact that we had both been 13-year-old girls, but that did play quite heavily into how it resonated with us.
Yes. And I suspect that we're a little older than this character. I certainly am. But still, I can say that within the time period that is referenced in the film quite explicitly, this is supposed to be 2002. This was a period of time during which I would have been a teenager and been having teenage experiences. So it's very relatable in that sense as well.
And I was already an adult by 2002. Mm-hmm. I was 20 years old, so significant, right? But that doesn't mean that me being 13, which is actually, that's me on the video. I am wearing a wolf, ranger, wolf woman ranger shirt. Because I was really,
of course you are.
I was really into D&D. This picture is from a family reunion, which I did not want to go to. So I had shaved my head. And I had like multiple ear piercings and wore lots of really funky necklaces. And yeah, I was kind of a little bit cringe.
I aren't we all though at 13? I mean, really.
Exactly. And I was super into Sailor Moon at the time. So grade 8, Sailor Moon, lots of other stuff. But this movie like spoke to that version of me quite heavily. And I was like, and it didn't just speak to the version of me that's then, but also now. It really spoke in a very different way than, say, some of the other media that I've explored from a like heroine's journey perspective as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also found it incredibly relatable. And it was a lot of fun because yes, it tickled the part of my brain that has been getting a workout more recently, which is all of the folklore and fairy tale stuff for sure. And I'm excited to get into all of that. But yeah, absolutely. I related to so much in this. And I really do think that, no matter what your age, I think that, there's so much to relate to here, no matter when, you were a teenager or whatever that may be. But I think, if you want to get into specifics, certainly, when I was 13, it was the height of the late 90s, early 2000s boy band craze. So all of the Four Town stuff is insanely recognizable. I'm just going, yep, I remember all that. I remember all of it. It's so funny.
I mean, Backstreet Boys were really, really big.
Oh my God. Backstreet Boys, NSYNC. Yeah. And I was sitting here laughing because the name is even like a collection of a few different names. There was a band called O-Town.
Yeah.
There was one called Five, but it was literally like, instead of an F, it was the number 5, the numeral 5. And that was the name of the band. And so like, it's so funny because it is all of those. The fact that there's 2 guys named Aaron on the, all of that. It's so specific. And so, and I was really into all of that. So, and I was cringe too. I mean, again, who wasn't? They were 13, but it's great because, you don't know you're cringe when you're that old. So you're just kind of embracing what you believe makes you unique. And that's what this movie is about. And I love that.
Yeah. And, we're going to be talking a lot about archetypical stories and especially the Wild Woman archetype. And why archetypes are important is because the 13-year-old in us is still a human, right?
Mm-hmm.
And was a human. And archetypes are these like patterns in story and in our psychology that appear because of how our psychology works as humans. And everybody and these sort of like everybody has these right in them,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Yep.
can recognize them, especially when they're speaking to something in us that maybe hasn't gotten a lot of attention in a while.
Mm-hmm.
So if you
Yeah.
resonated with this story on any level, it's speaking directly to something deep, deep, deep within you. And that's really why it's important for us to deep dive into the why of it working this way.
Mm-hmm. I'm so
Yeah.
excited.
Uh, Not too long on this, but I really want to shout out Disney for making the Embrace the Panda making of Turning Red, because it was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Like
It's so,
knowing everything behind the scenes, and then also like all of the love, care, the really, you know, powerful women creators behind this story.
yeah. And I loved it so much. And it's, if you haven't seen it, it's well worth watching. But one of the things I really loved so much about it is how, they're not being coy. They're not, when people say this is a puberty narrative, like, it's a puberty narrative. The creator said so. That's
Yeah.
very intentional. It's not meant to be subtle. It's really explicit. And I like that they're very straightforward about a lot of things. Like even the choice of the red panda. They're like, yeah, there really isn't a lot of mythology around the red panda. We just think they're cute. And like, that's great.
Yeah.
Like, so it's really worth watching because it's fun to kind of, get a look into their psyches and what went into creating this, and how they drew on their own experiences, what aspects of their experiences they've discovered were universal, how they themselves were several of the archetypes. So, for example, one was drawing on her experience of being a teenager, and she was thinking of that. And then another, she was pregnant, so she's thinking about being at that phase of her life. And then another has teenage children, and she's, coming at it from the perspective of the mother, really, with the children who are going through big changes. And it's so cool the way they all have these different perspectives that they bring. And yet they're all so similar. And so, yeah, it really shows the universality of these archetypes and how they all play into this universal story.
Exactly. And also just how much of a difference having a feminine lens,
Yes.
telling a story really
Mm-hmm.
makes. And
Yep.
so I'm so happy that Domi has gotten a promotion.
Yes, I'm so excited. I love it. It makes me so happy.
Domi, the director of Turning Red. Yeah.
On the left in this picture.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I love this entire cast crew creation engine, and I can't wait to see what all of them do next. And I hope that they're given more license to embrace more stories along this vein.
Yes.
All right, let's dig into the Wild Woman archetype, which is primarily documented in the 1992 book Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. I'm probably going to call her Dr. E because she is a doctor of psychology, as well as, specializes in trauma and storytelling, and was a Jungian psychologist throughout her career. I think she's retired now, but she still does like meet and greets and like attends conferences and all sorts of interesting things. But this was kind of at her peak and heyday. She wrote this book, and it was a lot from her own experiences. We'll get into kind of the book itself in just a second, but I wanted to read the foreword from the book because it sets a really good mood for where we're going with this deep dive in this conversation about Turning Red. All right. We are filled with a longing for the wild. There are few culturally sanctioned antidotes for this yearning. We were taught to feel shame for such a desire. We grew our hair long and used it to hide our feelings. But the shadow of the wild woman still lurks behind us during our days and in our nights. No matter where we are, the shadow that trots behind us is definitely four-footed.
I love that so much. I love it.
And where she comes from is really this idea that we have an innate power in the feminine.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And she would talk about it from a womanhood perspective, but she would also acknowledge that every human on earth has a feminine aspect to themselves. And this is not something that should be held just for womanhood.
Mm-hmm.
Really, what she takes it as is that this power can be summoned as a tool to not only fight for survival, but also generate renewal within ourselves when we face certain struggles or spiritual deaths.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's something we're going to dive into a little deeper, is that she identifies the wild woman as, sort of the example of the life cycle that exists in our psyches, in the lives of all people, and that everything we do is going through that cycle. Everything we experience is going through that cycle. And it is the wild woman who guides us through that cycle, because she is life. She is the creative power, and she is death. She leads us into the death and into the natural ending of things that must occur in order for rebirth to occur.
And how you're on the right path towards these cycles, which happen naturally to all humans. Right? That's really important. The life cycle pattern happens to all humans, is that you follow your intuition. You listen to the wild woman. You follow your instincts, right? You don't try to rationalize your way through things, because those rationalizations can really be based in cultural or societal ties that may not actually have your best interests at heart, i.e., patriarchy, capitalism, white supremacy, imperialism, right? And so she also acknowledges that within the book itself, that whatever culture you may have been raised up in, or whatever socialization that you may have had, may take you away from this instinctual gift that you have, that draws you into your inner power and helps you confirm your own spiritual identity that should be celebrated.
And most of the stories most of the stories that she references are, they come from indigenous cultures. And a lot of times she's not drawing from the popularly known stories. And even if the story is well known, she's not pulling from, published versions of them. She's pulling from oral tales that she has personally heard frequently from an old woman in that culture. And so, a lot of the book is about rediscovering and reclaiming indigenous wisdom. And you get that a lot throughout the book. And what's really great about Turning Red is that is a huge part of Turning Red, is about this family reclaiming lost wisdom of their family and their culture.
Exactly. And there's going to be an outer you, right? The one that faces the society, faces the culture that you're part of or that you're out. And there's going to be an inner you that is closer to the wild woman. And that's a really important concept as well. And when you can combine those two or integrate those two, you're going to live in a more whole way. And people that are familiar with the heroine's journey will feel like this is very similar, but it comes from a slightly different lens that is very helpful for us to view it because of a few things. The heroine's journey is fundamentally tied to a reflection of the society that we are most commonly in, which is patriarchy. This archetype is not based in patriarchy.
Mm-hmm.
So that also helps because you're going to be looking at all of these different aspects and not coming from a place that says you need to identify with the masculine to find power.
I love it.
Yeah, so cool. Okay. So let's dig into the actual journey itself and the structure. And I just want to give it like a little high level to talk about this a tiny bit so that you kind of can see what we're talking about. And I drew it very similar to the heroine's journey that I've talked about, that like Ty Black from Wit and Folly has talked about, or I've talked about on, What the Force from a Star Wars perspective. But this comes from a place of wild woman archetype, right? And so we start on the very far left with initiation, and it comes to a place of like understanding where you are. And in so many ways, initiation starts out with a purgatory sense of being stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get into that completely with Turning Red.
Yes.
2 is that you realize how much you are stuck and are actually completely dismembered or taken away from your former version of yourself. In some of the folklore and some of the tales, women lose their hands or parts of their body. So that's why she calls it the sacrifice or dismemberment. And in our Mei Lin's perspective, she's turned into a panda and taken away from her friends. And that's really, really important. So we'll get there as well. Wandering. So this is when she's in the traditional heroine's journey or hero's journey perspective. This would be when you're on your road of trials, but it has a different connotation in the wild woman archetype. Primarily it's separation from guardians or parents. Or culture.
Yeah. It's wandering specifically in the wilderness. It is total separation. You're wandering in your own subconscious, and you don't have anyone to help you. You have only yourself, because what you're seeking is that wild woman inside yourself. So you're on your own. Yeah.
And this is a weird thing to say, but the forest, this is called the initiation into the underground forest. The forest is in you, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so finding love, and I added of self in the underworld because it could be finding love of a wild mate, or it could be finding love of your own internal masculinity or internal self or internal power, or reconnecting with yourself. It can be both. But it is a life-death moment. And this completely ties to the hero and heroine's journey when you're in the underworld and you face the goddess, or you experience a death and rebirth moment. So this is life and death. Then harrowing the soul, you find new power. In the heroine's journey, this would be tied to finding your power as a goddess, right? And living the new life. You have to completely become the master of the wild realm. Next, realm of the wild world, you become the master of that, or know how it all works. And then the end is unification. Inner and outer forces are married. And sometimes this ends with a marriage of a wild mate. Sometimes it doesn't. So important to call out those things, but this will just give us a structure. And in Women Who Run with the Wolves, it's called initiation into the underground forest,
which is incredibly literal in this movie.
it is incredibly literal. So let's get into Turning Red, and we're going to start kind of before the initiation, just in how the different aspects are set up. So we get this narration from Mei Lin Lee when being 13 means she's an adultish person, according to the Toronto Transit Authority, being 13 means that. But she also talks about like, you know, how she views the world, how she's just rocking being 13, right? Or so she thinks.
She believes that because she is, for the moment, and we'll get into this, but for the moment, she is fitting into her mother's vision for her. And because she is fitting into that, she believes she has achieved adulthood. So that's part of the reason why she's like, I'm practically an adult, is because, you know, she's trying to honor her parents. She thinks she's doing a great job. She's feeling good about it. Like, so, you know, she doesn't recognize that there's anything wrong at all right now.
Yeah. And this is the getting into the start of the bargaining without knowledge. She doesn't realize what is wrong just yet.
Yep.
Just a shout out to the actual like screen itself, the title sequence. It's just so fun, and it shows Toronto in the background, which made my Canadian heart very, very proud. So
I was so happy for you while I was watching this movie. I was like, MC must be so happy.
This is very Canadiana. Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah. All right, let's get into best friend roll call. We have Miriam and Priya and Abby, who is adorable. Our fangirls who kind of represent all these different types of fangirls that have been out there. What did you think of the fangirls?
I loved them. I mean, I recognize them in both ways, right? Not just as types of fangirls, but also as just, you know, types of kids. And, you know, I had friends like these when I was a kid, and in the way that they dress and their interests and their personalities. It's really funny watching this because, I mean, between all of them, I would say I was probably Abby. Kid. I think that would have been me. But yeah, it's I mean, I loved it just because it is, again, you know, it's so recognizable. But yeah, they all are enthusiastic for the same thing, and yet they're all very different. And that's what's really cool about it, is that it's, you know, the fact that they are fangirls, you know, it's this one interest that excites them all and brings them together, even though they're all very different. And I love that.
Absolutely. I also appreciate two pieces. So vampire fangirl, right? Priya.
Yes, that's right. That wasn't there.
I completely dressed like Miriam. I had t-shirts with like either like dress shirts or like flannel over top of them, and like very baggy like jeans or like khakis. That was me.
Yep.
Abby, I don't know. Abby, who's speaking Korean half the time when she gets upset.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Every time she gets upset, she starts speaking Korean, and I love it. But I mean, she's just so enthusiastic about everything. Like, she doesn't do anything halfway. She's always 110% all the time. Exactly. And I love that about her. And Priya, I love because Priya was, you know, every single goth kid I knew in school. And it's so funny because adults didn't understand them and thought that they were, you know, weird and antisocial, but everyone loved them, at least from my perspective. It was just like, no, it's just their shtick that this is, you know, everything sucks and I hate it all. But in actuality, they're really excited about many, many things. And so that's what's great about her, is her whole attitude is like too cool. And yet, no, like she loves the vampire book, and she loves the band and all of these things. And she's all of them. They all are sharing in the same phase of life, and so it's really fun to watch.
It absolutely is. As well as, I love how Priya has black nail polish, which is kind of like her one maybe allowed rebellion thing away from her parents.
Because I think you're going to assume that if she comes from an immigrant family, she might not be permitted certain types of self-expression in the way that someone else might. So I think that's really important that that's shown.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then, so they leave school and they wander home or are on their way home. Actually, they're going to be heading towards karaoke, and they cross the Daisy Mark. Yes.
Yeah.
And it is the place by which the attractive and available Devon works.
Devon.
Devon. And like, I love that May Lynn is just like, ugh.
Yes. And his bucket hat, I died laughing. I was like, oh my God, these things were everywhere. And it's so funny the way that they're so hormonal and excited about just a guy, an older guy, a good looking guy, that, you know, the fact that he's portrayed as a complete loser is lost on them. And I love that he's just kind of like, oh, what? Like, he's lost. He's confused. He's, you know, I think presented as this like clueless teenage boy that doesn't know what's going on. And so I just thought it was so funny because it was, again, as with everything in this movie, so very recognizable.
Absolutely. And I love that the girls are talking about his hair. Like,
yes.
Like, my mom has cut his hair. It's like, could you hook a girl up? Like,
yeah,
like,
it's so soft.
It's
so
soft.
And let's be honest, for those of us who hail from the Reylo fandom, infatuation with hair is absolutely a thing. So
yeah, exactly. And
yep.
Yeah, and Maylin is just like not having it. She's like, it's like, he's like a hobo. Yeah, a hot hobo. Absolutely. Maylin reminds them of who their true loves should be, which is Four Town, who they
quote unquote real men.
Real men. Let me remind you who real men are. And she, you know, shows them Tween Beat, which like literally like Teen Beat. I had a subscription to when I was 13. Yeah. This is so 13.
It is.
And they go through like all of the
members
Robert,
of Four Town.
Yeah. All of the members of Four Town, which there are two errands. And there's a character in it who's Tae Young, which is almost like a blend of BTS's you know, Taehyung and Jimin from a looks perspective. It's fascinating. So they have like all of these different kids. There is 5 of them, even though they're called Four Town.
Yep.
Which is pointed out later by her mother. Right.
Yeah. They don't seem remotely bothered by it. But then, you know, her mother's like, what's that all about? And she actually admits, I don't know, which is hysterical.
Which is, yeah. It's just their thing, Mom. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, they really want to spend time with their friend, and they recognize that she's kind of caught up in this really, I don't know, this thing with her mom. Right. They really want to go for karaoke, and she can't because it's cleaning day. She loves cleaning.
Yeah. And this exchange is so interesting because I think the first time I watched it, I was like, oh, that's cute. But then later, watching it through the lens of this Wild Woman story, then, you know, I started to see, oh, actually, you know, these things that they're saying really have a lot of meaning, you know. Oh, it's cleaning day and I love cleaning. It's basically, no, she's allowed herself to become her mom's mini me, and she doesn't realize that there's anything wrong with that. And, you know, when they go, she's so brainwashed, you know, that's what they mean. Like, she is unaware. So this is, you know, now moving into the initiation, bargain without knowledge. She does not have knowledge of the fact that she has, you know, sort of bargained herself or been bargained into this, you know, complying with her mother's wishes and being who her mother wants her to be.
Exactly. And there's so many subtle little moments in this scene where she rushes back to, you know, do cleaning day. She puts on her name tag, and it then flashes to her mother's name tag. You get the cleaning started where she's sweeping the courtyard, and there's a little shot of the little hand drawing of Mummy and May May. And they're like little mini versions a little mini version of her mom. And
Yeah.
this all comes down to that like her mom is this key thing that is keeping her in place. And if we were talking about heroine's journey or a hero's journey, she would be a threshold guardian, preventing her
Right.
from growing up.
Mm-hmm.
But like one of the key things about sort of any of these stories, especially when they're on the cusp of adulthood, is that nobody can stay a child forever. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't avoid like the world when you're ready for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the knowledge is coming for you, whether you like it or not, and whether you realize it or not. And another thing I do want to call out here is the way. So there's a lot of mirrors in
Mm-hmm.
this movie. Both actual mirrors and mystical mirrors and mirroring. There's a lot of that, and this is one of the first places that you see it because when you see her and her mother sweeping across the courtyard, she's really mirroring all of her mother's actions. And so this is so interesting because this is, again, sort of, this direct imitation of her mother. She is entrapped in the world of the parent or mentor, and she doesn't differentiate herself in any way, really, at the moment. Things like when she shows what is it, her test papers with all the A+ and everything, and she's just like, killed it as per usual. She's showing
That's
look,
Mummy's little scholar.
right, I
Yeah.
know exactly what's expected of me. I can do it. I'm here for it. I'm killing it. She is just 100% exactly what her mother wishes her to be at this point in time, and just isn't conscious at all that there's something more or that she could be different and that she will be her own person.
And mirrors are used symbolically as a chance to glimpse at yourself and check who you truly are on the inside versus the outside. And they are used throughout this, similar to the ugly duckling story,
Yes.
where the ugly duckling sees themselves in reflection to the other ducks in the mirror of the water. And then later on, they see themselves in reflection to the swans that they eventually turn into once they have sort of figured out who they spiritually are. Yeah.
Yes.
And so we'll try to call out when we see or when there's mirrors and when they are reflected. But there's a key point in the story when a mirror is used. And I think it's really, really important to talk about it now just to set expectations. All right. So then we go into where does all of this mythos come from? Well, we have a revered ancestor, Sun Yi. We're going to go into her story a little bit more when we find out like the truth in the story of Turning Red, like what the mythology actually meant. But I think it's really important that like her mom Ming knows all of this important stuff, is in charge of a temple to show it to local Toronto people. It's the oldest temple of its kind in Toronto, but yet kind of doesn't live by the teachings that they brought over.
And this is what's so interesting is, again, we'll get into all this later, but this is one of the first places that you really see how this quite deliberate assimilation of this immigrant family has led to the loss of some of their, or maybe not the loss, but the suppression of some of their ancestral knowledge. So it's so interesting because, she's here talking about revering the ancestor, but we know she's also not sharing the knowledge and the lessons of that ancestor with Mei Lin. So I think this is so very interesting because yes, it's a story of personal becoming and growth and the life cycle, but it's also about that connection with ancestors and ancestral knowledge. And right here we see that just as May is, lacking knowledge and she's kind of in the dark, the mother is that sort of by choice. So like she has chosen to leave that behind. And, we'll get into this later, but this character has really become really the shadow of the entire family.
Yeah. And it becomes a family shadow in addition to being a family mythology. And Santayana said, as a philosopher, those who do not study history are doomed to repeat it. Right. But, it's really important. Like, in some ways, they're just playing lip service to it, because they haven't learned the lessons of the past, which is also really, really cool. We get this really quick moment of amazing, like, Studio Ghibli, like, food preparation that makes me so hungry.
Oh my gosh.
With Jin, the dad, who cooks and makes this like amazing stir fry. I just was obsessed with this.
Yes. And I have to say, yes, this is really cool. And it's real fun to see. Like the food looks incredible. Like, I mean, Ratatouille was amazing. And this is light years beyond that. So, I mean, you can really tell how far they've come. It looks incredible. And it does make me so hungry. But one of the interesting thing about it is this also will clarifies a little bit, I think, about some of the archetypes that exist within the psyche, because, sort of you have a psychic mother that you carry around with you. You have a psychic father that you carry around with you. And based on the archetypes, sometimes we would actually say that that May's mother is really fulfilling the role of the psychic father, because she's preventing her from growing and from learning, and she's, we'll get to later, she's implementing that psychic dismemberment. But then the father here, he's nurturing, later he's encouraging her to, really embrace her messy side and everything. So he, in some ways, is the psychic mother. And so I really love this, that it works on so many levels.
Her.
Yes. He's nurturing, he's feeding her, he's helping her grow.
Yeah. It's all of sort of these traditionally feminine roles in what we view archetypically, but it's awesome. Like that it comes from the dad, right? Who is also shyer and calmer than the mom.
Yes, very much so.
Yep. Which is like, so good. So then we move on to the crux of the actual problem, which is, mom doesn't like the band for town. She is suddenly extremely sexually awakened, and this leads into the confrontation at the Daisy Mart, which involves sort of this absolutely embarrassing, I would like to die now.
Oh, the secondhand embarrassment, the absolute mortification I feel every time I watch this scene. I'm like, oh my gosh, it hurts so much. It's pretty intense. But I do want to definitely first call out so during the scene where she's drawing under the bed, like the imagery there is amazing. She's under the bed, right? The quote unquote marriage bed. She is bathed in red light. She's in a cocoon, a womb. She's undergoing a transition as she's down there drawing her sexy pictures. And it's so funny because it just, again, like it works on this subconscious level. We just recognize that imagery, even if, it's not as explicit, which is great.
Yeah. And, it's at the very end, she ends up back in her room. It's like, you're her pride and joy. So act like it. Like, yes. And she even like says like mommy, like when this is all resolved and she's so embarrassed, like she is feeling so much shame over something that is really natural, right? Like her just drawing pictures, right?
Yeah.
But her mom made it into this whole thing to try and retain her innocence longer.
And transgressions, sorry, come in threes. And this, I want to point out, is the first of the three transgressions. And as typically works in fairy tales, the first time ends in failure. The second time ends in failure. The third time ends in success. So I want to definitely call out later when we get to the second and third, but this is the first one, right?
Oh,
Which is
that's
that,
so cool.
yeah, that she really, she did this thing that just horrified her mother. Oh my gosh, my little girl, what happened? And, this is the first time. And when it happens, she shuts it down immediately, makes this big scene. Maylin is so embarrassed. She's horrified. I'm never going to do that again, and all this other kind of stuff. But later she's, again, once she starts to come to that realization that, what, I can't be what my mother wants and I don't want to be, then she will try to break away a second time. And eventually she'll break away a third time and then it'll stick.
Yeah. Threes are really important in fairy tales as well as psychology. Same with sevens. And yeah, that's awesome that you called that out. So this actually ends her initiation stage because although she was in denial before, she knows now that she is stuck. And so she can no longer stay unaware. That's the key to this stage, is that as soon as you can no longer go back, it's like you took the blue pill in the Matrix.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and specifically it's a betrayal.
Or you took the red pill in the Matrix, not the blue pill.
Yeah, no, that I know what you mean. Yeah, the red pill. But it's a betrayal, up to this point, she's felt totally in sync with her mother. She's, she doesn't have any ill feelings at all. And not only that, but she feels totally confident in herself. So in this moment, she's betrayed. She feels that she's betrayed by herself. She feels that her mother has betrayed her. She, she's been betrayed. And so this is where she has to come to the realization that something is wrong. And it's the betrayal that is, the initiating event for her to realize that, all is not right.
Exactly. And then that leads us directly into her night's sleep, where she dreams of red.
Yes.
And red itself is such a powerful color. And this symbolically, of course, is plugging directly into puberty narrative and symbolically first menstruation, as well as that transformation that happens during puberty. And that, it feels like overnight these things happen.
Yeah.
And the acknowledged sacrifice is that once you are psychically aware, so in your mind and in your spirit, you're aware that you can never go back to the little girl that Maylin was, that was like little mommy, right? Little mom, the little version, the little mini me. You can never go back to that psychically. Your body follows suit symbolically.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love it because it's really a disassociation from reality. It's a disassociation from the body. This isn't my body. What is this? I don't recognize this. I don't know this. I don't control this. So that's really what's happening to her. And it's both, like you said, it's the psyche is something unfamiliar is happening. I don't recognize it. I don't know what it is. I don't like it. and then it's embodied here in the transition into the red panda or the transition into puberty. So it's great. She doesn't recognize herself. And yeah, I really love how this is not subtle.
No, not subtle at all. It's very literal. And,
yes.
And, I think that's sometimes what we need for symbols, right? Very literal symbols. But it ties back to puberty narrative, of course. Totally. What is going on? There's hair where I wasn't expecting it. I'm smelly. I have extra weight where I wasn't looking for it. we've both been there.
I
Missy,
know.
right?
When she yells, "I'm a gross red monster," and I'm just like,
Yeah.
"Oh, girl, right there, yeah. Oh, girl, man, I know how you feel. I get it." And this is where I want to make also an important point. Um, so yes, this is a story about a girl who experiences, a magical first period. Okay. But, this is the thing about puberty or any major sort of life transition. You are changed. You are permanently changed. I mean, yes, a period like puberty for people who menstruate or people who don't, whatever form your puberty takes, or that transition takes, it's a phase, but once the phase is over, you didn't go back to the way that you were before.
Mm-hmm.
You are changed forever. And it's about, understanding who you are now. And if that's an embodied experience for you, it's coming to grips with this new body that you have. So this is, I think this is so interesting because this does have so much to say to everyone, not just, not just girls and people who menstruate.
Yeah. Yeah. It can be symbolically applied to any life change where you are going through a death life cycle, which we referred to earlier, which is there are going to be periods in your life where you are spiritually dead, right? You are gnawed down. You're at your lowest point. You are nothingness, right? You don't have creative energy. You don't have energy for anything. And this ties back to the idea of how does that revivification, rebirth happen? Right?
Yeah, definitely. And another thing I really want to kind of bring up here is, so again, with this concept of, the betrayal causes the realization that all is not well. I'm not okay being what others have defined for me or what others have laid out for me to be. And I need to figure out another way. And so what happens then is that separation sometimes takes the form of sort of fleeing into that forest. And as we talked about, this underground forest, that's your subconscious. Yeah. And you're fleeing into that forest and you're looking for something and you don't know what. And I think a story that can help people understand or recognize this event is actually Snow White. A lot of people know the story of Snow White, which is why I want to use it here. Yeah. So she is the good and obedient stepdaughter. She's innocent without question. It is indicated that she is just, there's no reason, obviously, for the queen to treat her as she does. But she's just a good girl. And all of a sudden, one day, she finds out that her stepmother wants to kill her. And it's this horrible betrayal and this horrible realization that all is not well. And she is now separated from that psychic mother and she flees into the forest. And now she's alone and she's lost. And you could even interpret it as because it was her beauty that, made the queen hate her. It's this, again, disassociation with body. Something is wrong with me because it made someone want to kill me. Yeah. So she flees into the forest. And who leads her to safety? It's the animals.
It's the
forest
birds.
Animals.
Yeah. Yes. And the deer.
Yeah. Right. She gets in touch with the wild nature and it leads her to a place of safety where she can continue her maturation and her transition.
And she can find value in herself and be reborn eventually or work on herself, which will tie very closely into sort of the leaving her own life wandering period, which we will get to in just a minute here. But I really just wanted to point out how she talks about did the red peony bloom? Because I love that as a euphemism for your first period. Oh, so good.
Yeah. It's so soft and feminine and sweet when in reality, what's actually happening to you is a horror show. You're like, what is this? Oh my God.
I'm a gross red monster. And yeah, like just another like shout out to this movie for showing menstrual products on in a Pixar movie. I love it.
Yeah.
It should be normalized. This shouldn't be something that's weird and awkward. It is part of many, many, many people's lives.
Yeah. Well, and as critical as we are of her poor mother, and as critical as the movie is of her poor mother, isn't her mother awesome? Look, she is so prepared. She has everything.
Vitamin
she
B.
is set, man. I love
she makes
it.
her tea. She gives her extra snacks.
I know.
Hot water bottle. This mom knows what to do.
Yes.
Oh my
she's
goodness.
Ready.
Yes. But she doesn't want to admit exactly what has happened to her mother. And so she decides to go to school anyways, even though she is obviously not okay. And is kind of on the edge of everything. Everything is like she's worn thin. And how Dr. E from a Women Who Run with the Wolves perspective would classify this is that she is down to her bones.
Yes.
Right? Because that's fundamental. Like you have to almost be worn down in some way and continuously worn down until you're ready to regrow.
And the bones are, because they are eternal, because they last beyond everything else in the body, they are the essential nature. So when you're worn down to your bones, you are worn down to the basics of who you are, what makes you you. You're stripping away everything. This is the removal of all of your skins. This is the stripping away of everything that has been laid on you by expectations of your family and your society and everything else. And now it's just your essential nature. And yeah, so she's finding out who she is in a really painful fashion.
Exactly. And, not only does the social embarrassment of her like fellow students, put her on edge, but her mother puts her on edge. Like everything that used to be fine or she could ignore previously, which we have mirrored in the story. Like, I accept all labels is what she said previously. And she can't accept this label. She can't accept her mother's meddling. She comes back to the Daisy Mart and reacts in an incredibly horny way towards Devon compared to who she just was like, the night before.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like yesterday she was like, ew, yuck. And now today she's like, oh, yeah. She's so excited.
And although she doesn't understand this power yet, she is incredibly powerful already, enough that she can superhero jump over buildings.
Yeah. That she gets like a whole King Kong sequence or Godzilla or whatever here. I love it.
Yeah.
It's really fun. But and something I wanted to call out real quick though, when her mom is chasing after her, she takes off her heels so she can run after her. And for me, that's again one of those huge moments of just like recognition, because I'm just like, like, yes, like it's okay. It reminds me of that scene in Birds of Prey where Harley offers Dinah the hair tie.
Yes.
It's like the same kind of thing where you're like, my God.
You cannot run fast in heels.
Yes,
and also
you can't run in heels.
That ties back to the Wild Woman archetype too, that she knows to keep up with her daughter. She has to be barefoot.
Yes, exactly. Right.
It's awesome. All right. So then she ends up at home and her mom is like, no, we'll get through this. And she's like, what is happening to me? And her dad leaks the secret.
Yep.
It's happening already.
Yeah. What?
And her mom Malin is, this is the betrayal tenfold. Because it wasn't just her body that's betraying her. It was also the people that she trusted most in the world to keep her safe and knowledgeable. And they were withholding knowledge
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah.
was key for her to understand her own experience. And this is why I'm like such a big advocate for explaining as much as you can in the right
Mm-hmm.
terminology to your kids as possible as they're going through all of the different phases of life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and we'll get into this later, but like one of the things that's happening here is quite understandable and natural, I think, from the perspective of a parent, which is that, you see them as your little child. It's very difficult to, come to grips with the idea of your child becoming an adult and becoming their own person. That's just really hard. I remember, and this is obviously not the same, but I remember the last time I let my mom pick out my clothes for me. I was around this age. I would have been about 12 or so. And I remember, I didn't have time to go shopping. So my mom was like, I'll pick up some clothes for you. And at the time I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Well, oh my God, the clothes she came back with were something that someone, a good 6 or so years younger than me might wear. I was just like, oh, this is not going to work. Like, clearly my mother still sees me as her little girl and isn't conscious of the fact that I'm getting older and I'm going to need to pick out my clothes from now on. And so, so it's just important to recognize that, what is happening to May and what is happening to her mother are both, frankly, very normal cycles for people to go through. Her mom, this is why her mom withheld that knowledge from her and did not tell her and did not prepare her for,
she didn't prepare her for the red peony blooming either.
No,
she didn't prepare her for anything.
Right, exactly. She didn't prepare her, and she should have, but she did not. And it's because she just still sees her as her little girl.
Exactly. And so she ends up having the secret spilled. And so she has to share the secret family knowledge of like the mythology of the Red Panda and Sun Yi.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kept secret, locked, hidden away, right? Like a family shadow. The men were away. Sun Yi had to protect her daughters. So she's a mother, and this comes from an instinctual mother perspective. And she had an affinity to the wild, to the forest. She loved the forest. She loved protecting animals. And so asked the gods to turn her into a red panda to protect her family and the village.
Yep.
And this is so key.
Oh, it's everything all in one place, which I really, really love. And to go back to what you were talking about earlier about how the Wild Woman story does differ a little bit from the heroine's journey that we talk about all the time, is the fact that in a heroine's journey, if Sun Yi needed to protect her family, she would have sought a masculine power. She would have maybe trained to become a warrior. Something like that, where she associates with the masculine. But this is a wild woman story. And so instead, when she prays for the power to protect her family, what is given to her is a feminine power. It is the wild mother. It is, the wild woman. She becomes a beast. And this is not a bad thing.
She becomes a mama bear or a mama wolf or a mama panda, mama red panda. She becomes that powerful, feminine, wild protector.
Right. And it's the opposite of when masculine characters become a beast. It is they're putting layers of the monster on top of themselves, which are not their true self. When the feminine character, in this instance, the archetype, becomes a beast, that is the stripping away of the civilizing nature, which is not her, and getting to the essential self, which is the beast here, the wild woman. This is her true self.
This is the truth to us all, underneath us all. That's the key. And the power is there the whole time.
Yeah. Well, and I love that they specifically reference in this that her transformation occurred on a red moon, which of course then appears later with the ritual with May. But yeah, it occurred on a red moon, which of course, the moon, the lunar cycle associated with the menstrual cycle. And so it's indicating that she is strongest during the death and rebirth phase of the life cycle. This is when she is at her most powerful. So it's talking about, again, this transitional experience, this experience of menstruation, of puberty. It is where the power comes from, is the life archetype.
And the history and what this connection means is sort of, it's meant to be there for this family. This is May Lynn's heritage and something she needs to know about herself and acknowledge. But since moving to the new world, this has become an inconvenience because in the culture that they now live in, having this feminine, wild, unruly power is not acceptable, right? And so her mom and her mom's mom have decided to cut themselves off from this power.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. And again, it's the immigrant experience for many people where they feel that they must abandon language, customs, dress. They have to fit into the dominant culture, which, as we said, dominant culture it's patriarchal, it's capitalistic, it's, imperialistic. Yeah, exactly.
Filled with white supremacy.
Yes. It's all of these things. And you know what? This is a good opportunity. I want to point out, what is Ming's color? Green. It is the opposite of red. On a color wheel, green is opposite to red. She is completely opposed to, the red that is in her nature. And so this is just so important. And what's interesting is you actually see this at different points in the movie with May, which is when she's trying to imitate her mother, she will lean further into the green. When she is moving away from her mother and opposing her mother, she leans further into the red.
I love it. This is my jam, Missy.
Yeah, it's really fun.
And then, so she's now aware of this, and they take protections. They remove everything from her room. She is a prisoner, right? Which is also something that is quite common at this stage in the journey. Before she decides she can no longer stay where she is. And there's like red panda prints and claw marks and and all that exists is her little bed in the middle of the room. And she curls up into a ball, both as the panda the night before and then the next morning. And I've been in this position.
Oh, yes. Oh man. Again, with it being really recognizable, she's crawling along the floor, crying, and she says, "Go away." And then she curls into this fetal position. And I'm like, and that is the experience of cramps.
Yes. Yeah.
That is what menstrual cramps feel like. You crawl along the floor, begging for it to leave you alone. And you curl into a ball and wait. So yeah, I get it.
It's just great to have this like represented, even though it's all symbolic because she's a red panda, but it's like the experience itself, it's calling it out very obviously. Yeah. And then we have her people show up. Her pack, her spiritual family from an ugly duckling folklore perspective, right? These are her swans. And they're worried about her. Fundamentally, this is her peeps. These are her girls, right? And I love it so much. They show up and they're like, we're not going away.
Yep.
They come in and she stops them. And what's even more wonderful is that even though she's in denial of everything that's happened to her, they love her no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And actually find it cooler than cool. Amazing.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Oh.
Accept her. And in the Wild Woman journey, like, that's key. It's about finding the acceptance of yourself and, being comfortable with both what is internal and external, your new skin,
Mm-hmm.
and finding those that help you nurture that new growth of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we're coming right off of a scene where her mother told her there's a cure, which we take to mean something is wrong with you. Mm-hmm. This is not okay. We have to fix this. And meanwhile, here are her friends who immediately accept her, immediately embrace her, love the panda, are absolutely just have no problem with this at all. They love her as she is. They don't think she needs to be fixed. And I love it. It's beautiful.
It's gorgeous. And this is what you want out of your friendships. And if your people are not nurturing the inner you, right, to match the outer you, etc., then they're not the right people for you, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's entirely representative of the hug. You're our girl, panda or no.
Yes.
And the hug. Aww. And May is able to turn herself back into a human.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this just is the understanding that she can't stay exactly where she is. She can't go back to being her mom's girl, even though she keeps on thinking, oh, there's a cure. We just have to get through this next little phase. And so it's like the realization is the next phase, the understanding that there's something missing. I move stage 3 here stage 3 is, it's really important because she's like, something about you guys neutralizes the panda, right? Mm-hmm. I can have my life back. But then Miriam comes in, or better, you can come with us to Four Town.
Yeah.
And this is that there's something more important to May now than having her own life back, her old life back, going back to being the mini mom or mini me of her mom. There is something more important to her. It's her community, her newfound, like her new spiritual family, and the things that bring her joy.
Yeah. Yeah. Like she's about to step into that. Who am I without my mother?
Yeah.
Like we've moved past the initial, the betrayal, the dismemberment. It's, like, okay, we're past that initial shock of like, oh my God, things aren't the way I thought they were. And now we've moved into what's next, now that this change has occurred, what now? And so she's going to start to explore what the possibilities are for her beyond this. And the great thing is she's going to be doing it with her pack. They're going to be there with her.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. With her girls. And like from a heroes and heroines journey perspective, this would be when you cross the first threshold and you're officially on your road of trials. And it's wandering, but really fundamentally, it's moving away from your old life, your parents. This is when you're kind of going through the reimagining of what you could do. And it's going to be a lot of like trial and error, road of trials, right? But the wandering has this, in the Wild Woman's journey, it has this experiencing the world, making mistakes, but also kind of like relying on your instincts to guide you. And your instincts are going to be the things that bring you joy and It comes later, but your heart song.
Yes. Yes. Oh my God. I can't wait to get to that. But really, I mean, this is why her friends, this is why her friends have to be the ones accompanying her. There's no mentor. She has no more experienced figure to guide her in this, because that's not what's happening here. She's being guided by her instincts, and her friends are her instincts. They are her inner voice. They're in this same transitional phase with her, and they're all learning together and they're exploring together. They're not guided by any external force.
Exactly. And like what Dr. E would want us to know is that even though they're personified as friends, like this is a reflection of what is happening internally in May, and that you have to learn, if you have friends there or not, you have to learn how to listen to that voice and let it guide you. And this is the start of that. And that's why this is stage 3, and her leaving her old life and going wandering.
And the fact that they pull her out of her, her stupor, her depression, with a song is important, because it's a soul song. A song is associated in folklore with breath, and breath is soul. So, the singing, it draws out it is the voice of the soul, and it's going to, draw out that truth. That deep truth.
Yeah. They're speaking to her as her spiritual family.
Yes.
In the language that they speak together, which is the four-town music.
I love it.
So good. And so her parents test her, right? They give her the test, which is, deforestation and this sad orangutan. And you lost second place in your spelling bee trophy and the box of kittens. And she's able to, withhold it all and keep the panda in, right? Not get too emotional, or it's starting, like, not letting the panda out is the start of understanding the panda and understanding what it meant to her, but controlling it, right?
Claiming it.
Yeah, claiming it too. It's the start of that, even though it's about control and like denial at this moment, right? But when I start to get emotional, I just imagine the people I love most in the world, and her parents take that as her or them, right? Especially her mom, which is of course a lie. And she just lets it go. But it is her friends, right? They are the anti-panda, or at least the thing that, and this comes from integration, and they love her. They love the panda. The panda is also her. And so this comes from a place of unconditional love for yourself. And if you cannot necessarily, you're not strong enough to have unconditional love for yourself, your community can help you love yourself too, until you're strong enough to have unconditional love for yourself.
Yeah. And in a story, in a romance, this would be the partner. This would be the partner, perhaps serenading her, but coming to say, I see you, and I love you this way, and I accept you this way. So it's really cool that it does work on multiple levels like that.
It absolutely does. And so Malin tries to convince her mom why I must go to Four-town.
Wearing her mother's coat, because she's trying to show, I can be like you. Look, I'm still, she's still trying to show I'm you.
But
it's okay.
Got pink underneath.
Yeah.
And her hair is bright red.
Yep.
And her mom is having none of it. And she doesn't understand, right? She doesn't understand where she's coming from. And this, again, ties back to the ugly duckling story, where the mother duck in the community that the ugly duckling is born into, the birth family, doesn't understand the ugly duckling and what they are or who they are. But they are very powerful. The ugly duckling is very powerful and unique.
Right. And the adoptive mother in the ugly duckling story, the duck mom, is very important, because in that story, she is, again, the psychic mother, the instinctive mother, the mother that we carry with us regardless of whether that is our, biological mom or anything like that. This is the voice in your head that's like, no, you can't do that. But that's a very important sort of iteration of that particular mother archetype, because it's one where they can't comprehend this person that you're becoming. And so they deny it and they refuse it. And it is a sort of psychic killing. It's like, no, I refuse to allow you to be this person. So it's psychically killing the offspring, because I'm not going to allow them to be that person that I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is key, because this forces the wild woman who's going on this journey to leave. Like, there is no choice. You can never go back.
Yeah, which is why I think in the next scene or next couple of scenes or whatever, what you see is her basically realizing that and saying, well, wait a minute, if I can't do right and I can't do wrong, and it's like she just doesn't accept me no matter what, why am I trying so hard to please her? Like, so she hits that realization finally. Wait a minute, I can do something else, because clearly this isn't working.
Exactly. I did want to point out ever so briefly about Ming's relationship with her own mother is called out very heavily, because she's like, how do they treat, how do you treat your mother like this? And then Ming's mother calls and she makes the same face, right? Like, she's also hasn't dealt with some stuff with her mom and is judgmental. Like, her mother is judgmental. Grandma is judgmental of how Ming is handling May's situation. Did you want to point out the scar over Gravity's eye?
Yes. All right. So it's actually implied through a series of scenes, so it's never really explicit, but you are led to believe that whenever Ming was a child and had her own Red Panda experience, and apparently, hurt her mother, she must have acted out and hurt her mother. That's this scar, right? This scar. And notably, it's over her eye, because it indicates that the grandmother did not see her and does not see who she truly is. And so this is interesting, because this is really the generational wound. This is, the stuff that this family has not dealt with is hurting them because of their refusal to see themselves and to see one another. And so I really love that, because of the fact that it really is never called out explicitly, but it's indicated by all of all these scenes together.
It's also not explicitly called out in a lot of detail, although it's implied that the reason that Ming turned into the Red Panda was because she wanted to be with Jin.
I love that. I love it so much. I love it because
it's referred to, because they've only seen the Red Panda once. And then the Red Panda was taken away. But Jin, Jin was the cause, because Ming wanted to be with Jin, and that moved her away from her mother's desires.
Yeah, well, and it indicates that she has her own desires, which is really, really important here, because it's, this is the initiation for, would have been the initiation for Ming was, I wanted what my mother wanted right up until I wanted this guy.
Yeah, exactly. So I love that. Although this movie is so on the nose with its narrative when it's around Mingland, they reflect, and we talked about mirrors. They reflect and they mirror it in other aspects of the side characters and the stories that they're telling, because the problem with the main character, the problem that the main character is trying to solve, is also rippling through the generations. And more than one person is healed by the end of it.
Yes.
I just want to point out the dodgeball scene, because A, I play dodgeball and I love it, and B, rage is really, really interesting, and Dr. E actually talks a lot about it in the Women Who Run with the Wolves book. And so rage especially is even it's a raw and messy emotion that can be understood. Any sort of powerful emotion can be understood as a form of light crackling and bursting with energy, and is used, if it's used in a positive way, can help you see into aspects of yourself that or the world that you can't normally see, or care about aspects of the world that you can't normally see. It can be used in a negative way where you end up hurting others, but rage is a really powerful tool when we see injustice. And I just want to point out that emotions in and of themselves are not good or bad. It is just what you do with them. And this is an example of a bad, but the rage itself actually ends up helping her and shines light into what she truly needs.
Yeah. I mean, she draws on it later, and it becomes, a source of her power later on, that without her rage, she would not be able to, help her mother the way she needs to later.
Exactly. Yeah. She had to be mad to have the energy and the stores to draw into. But this leads her to the scene that you were pointing out earlier, just in more date, like her friends recognize that she's kind of transformed in a way overnight, but that this is their first step into womanhood. This is important for them, that they have to go to this concert. This is their opportunity to really experience something that they all desire. And really, their parents don't understand. All of their parents don't understand anyways. So why are they even listening to them in the first place?
Yeah.
We must leave. We must wander. We must go on our own journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
this,
oh God, it's just so good. Yeah.
It is. Well, and the whole, how, who are you? This is a rebellious side. I like it. Like this whole thing that Miriam says to her, that's so important that someone sees how she's growing and flourishing now that she's starting to embrace the panda. And that's really important. And again, this kind of, to go back to the mirror situation for the millionth time, she was forced to confront the ugly, the things that she didn't like and wasn't comfortable with. And now she's starting to see the good and the positive side of this. And she's seeing it reflected back at her with her friends going like, I like you this way.
Yeah. You're smart. You're powerful. You have good ideas. Oh, and this thing that you found disgusting, not hours earlier or day earlier, is actually adorable and wonderful and brilliant. And what I love is that she turns into a panda in this moment, like when Abby's like, you know what could help me? Just, a little bit of panda. A little bit of panda. Could you, come on, just to clear my mind. It's so cute. Let me just have a little bit of panda. And oh God, I love Abby so much. But
she's the best.
She dreams of Robert from Four Town as a merman.
Yes. Just like the way she drew Devon. And I love this, by the way, because this is now at least the third instance we've seen of the panda being unleashed by basically lust. Because there was obviously, when she was doing the drawings, and then again, do you remember like when she's having trouble like keeping like the tail and the ears in the hallway? It was because she saw a guy with like swoopy hair. And her brain just went, what? And so like that was his start. And then here she needs to unleash the panda. So what does she do? She imagines a hot guy as a mermaid. And it just makes me laugh so hard that like she just immediately acknowledges that her desire is a source of power and just goes right to it.
And desire is, and like joy and like knowing what you want is a source of power.
Yep.
Right. Because it cuts through all the BS and just gets you exactly where you want to be.
Yep.
I have to just point out, I did do some research on how much band tickets cost because they said it
Oh.
was $200 a ticket.
Mhm.
So Paul McCartney in 2002 was $250 a ticket.
Huh.
The average band, like that was just like a normal band, would be $40. A more high-end band would be $60 in 2002. But Britney Spears and
Oh.
NSYNC and other boy bands were upwards of an average of $100
Yep.
because they could charge higher prices to the hordes of especially young women who were interested in seeing them.
Yeah. Well, and I have to tell you, again, I'm trying not to go too much into all of my own experiences here, but this whole sequence is so funny to me because I remember my sister creating a presentation for my parents to explain why she should be allowed to go to NSYNC. Like, I remember all of that. And I also love the, what is it? The thing her mom says about like, who does she think, or who do they think they are? Celine Dion. That's hysterical. Firstly, because of course, it's referring to like they're in Canada and Celine Dion obviously is like a Canadian national treasure.
Yeah.
But then there's also the fact that in 2002, Celine Dion was still like a mega star. I mean, like, 97 was Titanic when she sort of like became the goddess of, of the music
scene. She ended up like doing her run in Las Vegas around that time too.
Yeah.
And her concerts were always sold out in Las Vegas.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, and 2002 would have been like probably shortly after she recorded The Prayer with Andrea Bocelli, which was also like a huge thing because, so like that was a big thing. So I guess the point is that like this is another example of like this story is so universal and at the same time so very set in the time period.
Yes. I just was like, really wow, fun. This was a big band. If they were like $200 walk-up tickets, like that's insanity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my goodness. But okay, so not only is she appreciated by her friend group, which again, I've told this to my own teen and my own experiences. If you just have like a couple of friends that got your back, you can take on the world. But the new May, this May that is out there in the world and experiencing the world is appreciated by everybody.
Yeah.
Like this is just, and I just love this. I love the like kind of montage cut sequence of them just wandering. This is literally like the wandering aspect. They are trying stuff out. They're trying to make money. And in some ways it is pretend adulthood.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so interesting because obviously a lot of the point of the sequence is the contrast between, her exploring her true self and then her, continuing to, when she's around her mother, conform to her expectations. So I love that, for instance, there's a scene where she's running back home and you see her quite literally button up before she runs into the house.
Yeah.
And, so things like that, where she's like, when you're around mom, you're keeping it together. But in the meantime, you're out there, exploring, finding out who you really are. And so it's really cool. It's a cool sequence and, it's everything, right? It's what they eat. It's what they, how they dance. It's what they listen to. It's, it's everything. And I love that it's just, they're exploring in every possible area.
And she's wearing like way more pink and red. And just like, yeah, it's awesome. And then, they're $200 shorts. And so the guy that they haven't gotten along with previously offers them a deal. Literally Tyler's birthday with Tyler and the panda on the front of the invite.
Yeah.
He's like, want to have a big birthday, but I know if you're there, everyone will come. So will you come to my birthday?
Yes.
Oh
Tyler wants the power of the wild woman. He sees the value of that feminine power. He wants it.
He does. Yeah. And And this makes Malin have to have a bargain where she has to make a choice to use that power, even though her mother has reinforced that she's not supposed to use it. Her mother's, because it's also grandmother, has reinforced that she's not supposed to use it. And that comes from, her aunts and her grandmother showing up because they don't trust Ming to complete the ritual, right? And this is awesome because we get a couple of generational things happening. When they brought her all gifts, like what you go through in some cultures. When you go through puberty, you're given gifts and you're like, now you're a woman, yay. Now you're a panda, yay. But they also, like, there's this bragging moment from Ming's perspective, like, oh, my daughter's like a straight A student. Isn't she wonderful? Oh, but Ming, you couldn't control your panda. Like, do you remember what you were like? But no, she can control. She's better than all of us. Like, I'm a braggy mother.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And this is all laying it on thick because, of course, what we're coming to is, the second time that, she's going to openly oppose and disobey her mother and try to break away. So, we talked about the 3 times that she sort of turns away and tries to be someone different. We're coming up to that. And so, so of course her mom is sitting here going like, oh, she's perfect. She's like, basically exactly everything I want her to be. And of course she's not.
And she's in red, right? Like she even like everybody else is in green. All of her family is in green or like teal, different shades of green. And there is Malin in bright red.
Yep. Yeah.
Like, I am not. Like this is like that ugly duckling stuff, right? Birth family versus spiritual family.
Yeah, they're also a pack for her.
Yeah,
they're also
absolutely.
her pack, but they are the pack that has been domesticated by the dominant culture.
Yes, absolutely.
So, and she's now turning against that and saying, no, I don't want to be part of this dominant culture. I want to break away from that. And they're definitely not ready for that yet.
No, they are not. No. It is interesting that there is 7 panda women.
Yes.
7s are really, really important to Dr. E as well. I'm not going to go into it, but I find it really fascinating that there's 4 aunts, 1 grandmother, 1 Ming, and 1 mom. So that's just that's awesome.
It's very cool. And 7 is a number you find often actually in cases of I don't know how to put this, like a period of bondage in a fairy tale. Often someone is, they are entrapped or a prisoner for 7 years. You'll get that a lot. The story of the wild swans where the brothers are transformed into swans or everything. That's 7 children. There's 6 swans. There's the brothers, and then the 7th is the sister who is also entrapped until she is able to free them. And so, so these 7 characters who are bound together and who are, trapped by some kind of curse, that's absolutely a fairy tale thing for sure.
Yeah. And in the examples that Dr. E uses in Women Who Run with the Wolves, especially talking about the initiation into the underground forest, there's 7 years that she has to stay stay hidden at a later stage, and she is in servitude for those 7 years. And there's 7s are just really important, and it was really, really interesting to see that there are 7 pandas.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
And May being the 7th panda is how we know that she's going to be the one to break them all free.
Exactly. That's also the child. The seventh child is the 7th child. That's also like rings with sort of power.
Mm-hmm.
from a psyche perspective. And yeah, the seventh child being, or the seventh one is
Yep.
powerful. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so let's talk about grandma calling her out. So we have this moment where grandma found panda fur in the house, I guess, right? And has given it to walked in on May and has said, like, it feels so good to let it out, so free, but each time you do, it gets stronger. And this is a
Mm-hmm.
warning. This is her trying to say, you won't be able to control it.
Mm-hmm.
But in some ways, she's also speaking the truth, right? We ourselves need to embrace the panda that's in us, this wild woman, to know our own power. We need to reconnect with the panda regularly so that we can be revitalized. Or
Mm-hmm.
or
Yeah.
the wolf in Dr. E's case with the women who run with the wolves.
Right. And so it's interesting because this is where I really do want to mention, how Dr. E's perspective differs from some similar folklore studies that I've read. If you've listened to our other episodes, you may have heard us reference In Search of the Swan Maiden, a narrative on folklore and gender by Barbara Foss-Levy. And her perspective is definitely very different. She's very focused on how woman as beast, the animal bride or whatever, is seen as dangerous, that the culture, fears feminine power. And, so it's woman as other. Ooh, she needs to be suppressed. She needs to be defeated and everything. And I think that what you see here is the idea that the grandmother has really bought into that narrative. Whereas what May is going to discover is what Dr. E espouses, which is like, no, this is the source of your power. It's a good thing. It's who you are. And you are mutilating yourself if you do not acknowledge it. And yeah. I want to call out here, take a look at the wastebasket that May is holding. It looks like a cage.
Yeah.
The grandmother is dropping the little tuft of panda hair into a cage. She's saying, this is where it belongs. This is where you have to put it. And we know that each of these other pandas, these other women, they have their red panda trapped in a cage, in a talisman where they've sort of, they keep it trapped and they keep it hidden and they deny it. And that's what she's telling May that she needs to do. And of course, what May's going to learn is that it's the opposite. No, you need to let it out.
It is the opposite for her. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have sort of this amazing moment. So May has decided to leave for the party. The party is where they're going to make all their money. And so it's an obligation not only to Tyler Fortown, but also her friends, right? Her people, her spiritual family. But, mom is warned by grandma, like, don't let her out of her sight. This is like, keep her prisoner. Right? Keep her prisoner, be her warden, protect her from this journey she's about to undergo, or this transformation where there really is no looking back, right? You're going to be forever changed. But as May leaves and she hides, she tucks in her bed with pillows, which is like so classic. Like 1990s and before, but 2002 as well. She accidentally knocks over this frame of her and her mother. And you and I had talked about this a lot before we recorded. So let's go into this. This is awesome because this is also thematically something that is happening throughout Disney narrative.
Yes.
And is a very common symbol, but is strategically being put in Disney narrative. So Pixar and Disney animation with Encanto, which we see the reflection of the misunderstanding between the generations reflected in cracks.
Yes. Yeah. So in Encanto, the house is cracking, and it cracks more when the generations are misunderstanding one another or are opposing one another. And in Brave, she rips the tapestry and she has to mend the tapestry. When her and her mother are in opposition to one another. And here, of course, you've got the shattered frame. And there are just so many examples of this that is, we're showing, the breaking between these generations. And it's amazing to me, it works, of course, as a metaphor in this story, but it is incredible to see it that it is such a common motif right now. And you do see a lot of conversation about, the grappling with intergenerational trauma that is happening in a lot of these narratives. And it's amazing that that's really the way that it's being expressed over and over again.
But her mom, because of the broken picture, which is to show the betrayal in this moment between Malin and the mom, finds the t-shirt, which is fur baby.
Yeah, I love it.
Which is adorable. Like, I want that shirt. That's great. But finds underneath it like this little shrine to this new identity that May is building.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's all red.
Yes, it's red. It's messy. It's, hidden. It's hidden from view. But once again, you find it there under the bed and that womb-like space. Again, this is who she's becoming, and it's here.
This is who she's incubating in all of her wanderings and her trials and her figuring out who she is. And it has all this important stuff, including Tyler's birthday party and not just Fort Town, but also a lot of self-love for the panda as the world sees the panda.
Right. Yeah. So the mother is coming to realize she's not suppressing the panda at all.
Exactly. No green in this space whatsoever from a color theory perspective. But we have the party, which we have, the it's like the one last show trope, right? Like one last time or one last show. Like, I'm not supposed to turn into the panda. Well, that means that somebody can't go to the concert. Well, then I'll turn into the panda.
Yeah. It doesn't take a lot of convincing, but and then this is it. This is the second time that she's like, all right, I'm turning against my mother and, what's expected of me. And, and oh, by the way, I just have to mention randomly, I, for some reason, love that they're playing Bootylicious.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
Child during the scene. And I'm dying because I'm like, first of all, yes, that was at every single school dance and everybody was playing it.
Everyone was playing it. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. But also just in general, again, it's back into this, like, it's this embracing of body and sexuality and all of these things that, that they're all discovering. And I just love it. So it's great.
Yeah. And I love that Priya's dancing with the other goth girl.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And then they're all like just having fun together. And yeah, it's so great. And, the girls end up on the roof and kind of like enjoying the moment. Right. And of course, this is a straight shot from Sailor Moon, like this sort of feeling, like the moon in the background, the Toronto CN Tower in there. Like, it looks like Sailor Moon, but also it's like they're on a roof. They're at their peak. They're feeling everything that they're feeling. And, Miriam is always the one who asks May like the questions about whether she could keep it or embrace it or whatever. And she's like, what if you kept the panda?
Yeah.
And like, she starts to realize like, maybe this is an option, although she's not quite there yet. But they realize with horror, and I don't have a slide for it, but that unfortunately Abby misread the flyer. Yes. And they've been going off of incorrect information, which is also quite a common trope in fairy tale and mythology, which is that somebody misread something or was told something incorrectly or whatever. And actually, this is exactly what happens in the story that is in Women Who Run with the Wolves, who explains the initiation into the underground forest. A lie was spoken, and it leads to the next phase, basically. So it's really interesting that they pulled in this moment here to say, like, Toledo, where's Toledo? And it's like exactly, like, as a Canadian, like, I don't even know where Toledo is.
Kansas.
Oh,
or Oklahoma? No, see, now people are gonna be like, no, you know, I don't remember. I should know, but I don't. Sorry, Midwesterners, you can be mad at me. It's okay.
But now they hear the radio, and it confirms that it's going to be the same night as the ritual. And the reflection is that you haven't completed everything that you needed to do. And he went after her mom. And the rage, this is like the bad version of the rage, which leads her into needing to suffer some consequences associated. But it's
specific. She's upset not only that she's going to lose what she wants, which is going to the concert, but she's really upset at the idea that she might let her family down.
Yeah.
So that's really what prompts this rage and just makes her just really lose it. And so I like that you get to see the dark side of the panda, but you understand that this is prompted by, again, this fear of disappointing them.
Exactly. Which leads her mom to having to pick her up, and the betrayal of the moment, which you pointed out is the second sort of betrayal.
The second attempt to break away has also been thwarted now.
Exactly. And so it comes to the red moon night, the night of the concert, and above the Sky Dome, they've opened up the Sky Dome, which is a big deal for concerts, by the way. Just to let you know. They open the Sky Dome, and there's like lights in the sky, like the bat signals with fours, which I haven't pointed this out, but the reason they're called Four Town is because there's 4 people in May's core group. It's the 4 of them.
Aww.
And so, like, this is just reminding her that she's not with her people. 4 is the worst number, her grandma says. So she feels like, my people are the worst people.
Oh,
the things I love are the worst things. Like, it's all of that, right? And then grandma says, and don't worry, Maylin, you too will soon banish the beast within. And she's just like, I don't want that.
Yeah. Well, she specifically says you'll banish the beast within and finally become your true self. And of course, what she's realizing is, no, actually, the beast is my true self.
Yeah. Or part of me.
Yeah.
Least. And I don't want to separate that. That's a different sort of dismemberment.
It is. Exactly.
And we have this wonderful connection. And you pointed this out earlier with Jin, her dad, cooking food, but she comes in, he has found the video recorder that she used to record the fun, right? This is another mirror.
Yep. Look at yourself, May. Look how happy you are. Yeah. Exactly.
Look at yourself. Look at how happy, look at how comfortable in your skin, both skins you were, because you loved all of these different aspects of yourself. And she even says, like, I'm a monster.
Yeah. But that's not really how she sees herself. That's how she's taught to see herself.
Exactly. And that's like, in many ways, like, women go through this period of time where people are afraid of this power. And that's why I feel like this archetypical story is so important, because if we kind of let the culture tell us that we're monsters for being women, and that we have this dual nature to us. And Dr. E talks about that a lot in the book too, that we have this internal wildness and this external caregiving nature, or who we are we have the internal and the outside, right? And we have a dual nature to us that if we let society tell us that we are monsters, we kill a piece of ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we break the cycle because again, this whole point is that the divine mother is the life death life cycle. And even though it's, a 3-phase cycle, it's 2, right? It's life and death, and it's both existing together. So the dual nature is the life and death natures coexisting. And so, if you kill one, you break the cycle.
Yeah.
And you can't advance. And that's why the wild woman and the divine mother are so vital and such an important part of the psyche, is that they are what guides us through those cycles to make sure that we always come back to rebirth and that we don't ever get stuck.
And it's how we rejuvenate ourselves. It's how we process things we've been through. It's how we regain energy when we are filled with being dry and down to our bare bones, right? We need to transform all the time and change and be accepting of that change. And if we're not accepting of that change, that's when we get stuck. But there's always an opportunity for a new journey. All right. So now we're into ritual time, which is going to be starting out our step into life and death, or finding love of yourself or your animus in the underworld. Ooh, okay.
I love it.
I love so many things about this scene. There's a circle, so it's a portal.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mirror. In some ways, it's a gateway. The shaman, who's played by James Hong, who's amazing, it talks about how the song that they sing could be anything, but your grandma's old school, and so they do the weird, they do the rhythmic bell ringing and drum beating and like conking on the little pot thing, right? But what's important about this music to get to your inner self is that it's your heart song, and that it speaks to you in your soul.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's
it's back to what you're talking about earlier. It is. Yeah. It's the heart song. It's the soul song. It is saying that, this is, it's your instinctual self. And so it's your true self. And there's only honesty there. There's only truth there, only knowledge of self. That's all you're going to find. And also it's summoning. It's got a summoning power. And so, if it's going to summon that truth, then it's going to, it really summons her to her friends, or summons her friends. It's saying these people that recognize me, I'm going to find them through the power of this song, or they'll find me through the power of this song. So yeah, it's hugely important that he has this line about, it just has to be sung from the heart.
Yeah. And mine is Tony Bennett. That's showing his music that speaks to him is Tony Bennett, but Maylene's is allowed to be something different. And that sets us up for later on in the movie. But I just love that moment, because I talk about this a lot when I talk about Star Wars, but how you're on the right path is that you feel joy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know that these things will make you happy. That's how you know that you're on the right path. And that's the same with this, by pointing out that the heart song is unique to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the ways that we know that she's going to, that in this moment, aside from just what we know about story structure, of course, we know that this is the moment she's going to break away because everything is set up to that point. But one of the other kind of visual cues that we have to know that this is the moment where she's really going to break away is, remember how I said, her color is red, her mother's color is green because it's in opposition to her. And when she's, trying to be more like her mother, she's always wearing green. Well, no matter how much she's worn red throughout the entire film, she's always had this little green barrette holding back her hair in the corner. So really kind of keeping her pinned in place, even in the moments where she's being rebellious. What does she have now? It's a little red flower.
Yeah. She's
Like,
grown from the green.
yep,
Yeah.
she's moved away. She doesn't have the green, like, or it's there rather, but it's covered,
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not what's holding her back anymore. Now it's the red, which is her color, which means that she's coming into herself, and nothing's going to hold her back, and she's not just going to follow her mother. Now it's this is going to be she's going to be responding to her own instincts now.
Absolutely. And so we get to stage 4, which is finding love of self in the underworld, life and death. Again, this could be that you actually fall in love with a masculine character in the journey. That's quite common. So it's like you fall in love with the animus, but it can also be that you find the love of these disparate aspects of yourself in this journey. And really what struck me about this entire scene was it's in a bamboo forest. It is the wild, and it's historical wild for Meilin based on her own family mythology.
Mm-hmm.
And she sees Sun Yi, who transforms into, you got it, a mirror again. And this is also quite a common symbol in the heroine's journey and journeys into the self that involve feminine power, where you see different versions of yourself reflected inside of this. And Sun Yi is giving her this by being the old wild mother, a circle itself. So in the story that Dr. E talks about, it's a moat, but you're not supposed to enter the water because that equates to a death that you cannot be revived from. You have to experience the death that involves a way back.
Yeah.
As a full and whole person. And so you can't go swimming, you can't be in the water. And that's exactly what we see happen in this moment. She is like touching the water and sees that this is going to remove the panda from who she is and who she sees herself to be. She's no longer going to have the red reflected on the outside. She is no longer going to have the panda on the inside. And if she lets the panda go, she can no longer stay in the life, death, life cycle and grow.
Yep. Yeah. And it's painful, and it's another form of dismemberment. And I do want to also just briefly kind of, because we haven't talked about it yet, the way that, her hair turns red when, once she becomes the panda and everything, it stays that way. And then we see that later also with the mother and grandmother and aunties, their hair turns red as well when they finally, embrace their pandas again. And this is important because in folklore and in fairy tales, hair is sort of this indication of, mind and thought and what is in your mind, what you're really thinking about. Right. So when her hair is red, it's because, in her private thoughts, she's still with the panda and she still is the panda. And, so if she were to strip the panda from herself, then, she's denying that. And the denial means that this is, no longer forefront of her mind. It's now, subconscious and it's repressed. It's not something that she knowingly embraces.
Exactly. And when she embraces the panda, finally, it is powered by this new version of herself that she flashes through and sees images of her spending time with her friends, the joy she experiences in different moments. But it's also sort of rage. It's also bad emotions. Because it's all from a place of power that she realizes that the inner goddess or power can finally be on the outside and she can be fully integrated in the future. And like, that's like coming to a middle path and figuring out that the yin and the yang are actually a single symbol.
Yeah.
It's that the light and the darkness are are a cycle that is all part of the same unit. It is that she can embody the life, death, life cycle and continue growing and changing, much like Persephone finally is able to be life and death
Yeah.
in her journeys in and out of the underworld. It
Yes.
is owning both.
Yes. And this is why it's so important that, the divine feminine, it is both creative and destructive power. So it is not, when we look at it as like, oh, it's good or evil. It's not, it's both. And it's neither, because it really is just indication of, these things must be in balance, and that's what she needs. And she's, she can't lean too hard into one side and then lose the other. She needs both.
And she has Sun Yi as a template and a way to go forward, because she was both a protector with destructive power to destroy an army, but also a mother who loved and cared and nurtured. And that is the power of the wild woman. Fundamentally, is you can be both. You're not limited to just being one thing.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And so this all comes down to her crux when her mother confronts her after she leaves her spiritual inner self, right? That's what's happened. And she's like, I'm keeping it.
Yep.
I love this.
Love it.
It's just so good, right? Because this is new baby Malin Red Panda. She is accepted who she is, and is out of her, basically her trial in the underworld, or a trial in her internal journey. This would be considered a threshold from a heroine's journey perspective, where she confronted the dark mother or the goddess within, obviously being Sun Yi.
Yeah.
Right. And she's like, nah, you're not gonna stop me. And this unleashes the darkness within her own mother, this repressed darkness. And it's an accident, right? She didn't mean to release it, but she cracks it, and it's more powerful than anyone could have ever imagined. And this transformation sequence is awesome.
Yes. And I love this so much, because I think in other stories, you might have seen the story end once she claims her panda and says, I'm keeping it. And it's because it's about her finding that. But what we're getting here in these last, 2 stages of the journey is we're getting, firstly, she's going to free all of them, not just herself, all of them. But also now we spend time with the actual power of this panda, because it's not just the decision. It's all right, you made this decision to take this power, to claim this power. Now you're going to see what it can really do. Exactly. And that's what's important about seeing the mother, and eventually, obviously, the grandmother and the aunties unleashed, is you are going to see how powerful this is.
How powerful the wild woman is. That's key. And conversely, not just what the wild woman is, because we get to see all of that and how powerful her mother's wild side is, but we also get to see what Malin is able to do by living integrated with the wild part of herself.
Yes. Yeah. This is, look at what it is. When you're whole, look at what you can achieve. Look at what you can do.
And that's exactly what the next stage of the wild woman journey is, which is harrowing the soul, using your power, your newfound power. You're a brand new baby, spiritual baby who's just been reborn, and you have faith in your own power. You have the determination to get where you need to go, and you're infused with this sense of like, I must go and live.
Yeah.
Right. I must live because you're now just a newborn integrated new version of yourself.
Yeah.
You want to experience the world and you want to find your people, right? And so she has this amazing like travel across Toronto sequence where she literally can transform and sort of superhero across the city. And it's anime and it's Sailor Moon and it's glorious. Like it's just it's powerful and cute and funny and adorable, and I love this moment so much. But she ends up at the concert through the sky dome.
Yep.
She's a superhero now, basically. And she arrives and she has this confrontation with the people that she kind of betrayed, right? She betrayed them by saying, you know, she didn't own to what was truthfully her. But also Miriam is also not owning her true feelings, which is taken, you know, hey, your truth will come out whether you want it to or not. And it's Robert Jr., which is her little like nanopet or neopet.
I love that.
Squeaks.
I love that. That was so funny. They're like, oh, she's been feeding it every day. Like,
we found it at the party.
Yeah, like so they've been like caring for her even from a distance, and I just love that. It's so great, and but it's important because it shows how, you know, denying yourself can hurt more than just you. It can hurt other people. It can hurt the people you care about, and so it's really important that, you know, being true to herself. It was about more than her, and so I really like that they show that. But then, of course, you know, the fact that her friends are so quick to accept her back. You know, there's no need to go through additional trials at that point. Like, no, we just all have to acknowledge the fact that we love each other. And like, now let's scream about this, this concert.
And they also forgive Tyler.
Yes, immediately. You're a 4-townie, and they lose their minds.
Yes. And like, that's like just a shout out to the power of fandom. I mean, it can't get past some things like racism and sexism,
of course,
things like that. But fandom, generally speaking, can help you bridge a lot of gaps. Differences in like where you grew up or who you are, and the fact that you're really into this thing is inner power. It's heart song in the story. Yeah. And then of course they get the moment where they get to like be together and experience the song, and the song itself is so good.
Yes. Yep.
The Four Town song. It's so
good.
Yeah,
no, I absolutely have jammed to these.
And I love that they're on like they're wearing wings and they're on like wires, and it's like, we're in heaven. We're in heaven symbolically. Like, that's so great.
Yeah. Well, and I think, weren't they in cages at the beginning? So like they start in cages and then they break free and then they've got wings. It's like nuts.
Like they break free, and what, like Aaron like tosses basketball because that's his joy, and that's why he broke. Like, it's all symbolic of what's happening in the story, right? Like they're able to be angels, and May is able to be a red panda and fully live her life, which is awesome. But we have Mom May. And she's like kaiju level huge.
I love it. And they were like, well, we said she was big. And she's like, that big? Like,
yeah. She's here.
Yeah.
Like, exactly. You haven't dealt with the biggest problem in the room.
Yes.
Which is healing your mother.
Yeah.
And repairing this generational trauma that everybody is experiencing. And this leads us to our like second to last step in the journey, stage 6, which she's a master of herself, and she is able to use all of the different aspects of herself to fully exist as a wild woman.
Yeah. Yeah. And she knows exactly who she is without hesitation. The mother yells at her, this isn't you. And May says, this is me, like she's telling her exactly who she is. And then she has this line about I like boys, I like loud music, I like gyrating, which is a hilarious callback to her mother being like, where are those boys gyrating on the TV?
Yeah. I like loud music. Yeah. Tyler's party was my idea. Like everything. And she just admits to everything.
Yeah, she owns it. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Absolutely.
She owns it. And so they start to make the big circle around the giant mom panda. Yep. And everybody starts to kind of like work together at the direction of May, which is, like, I'm going to confront my mom and I'm going to use my power to do that, which is awesome.
Yeah. Well, and like, I love, again, all the lines are just so on the nose, which I just love. But, there's the other line, which is, sorry, I'm not perfect. Sorry, I'm not good enough. Sorry, I'll never be like you. And to go back to how this just seems to be reappearing over and over in, our media, and especially, Disney and Pixar products. There are very similar lines in both Encanto and Brave. In Brave, she always talks about how, I'm not going to be like you. I'll never be like you. And then there's also, then in Encanto where when the house is breaking apart toward the end and, what is it? Mirabelle says to her grandmother, I'm never going to be good enough for you. Am I? Like, I'm never. Yeah. And so it's interesting how, this same concept of like, sorry, I'm not like you. Sorry, I'm not good enough. This is an important thing to confront in order to hopefully heal that generational wound. And I do want to mention, by the way, like, it would be great if all of us could heal our real world relationships in this way. But that's not always possible. But that's okay, because what this story is about how you can heal those parts in your own psyche.
Yeah.
So the parts of your psyche that tell you you're never going to be good enough, you're never going to be like, whoever you think you should be like, and all those things, you can confront that and you can say that that's okay, that you're not perfect and you're not going to be like what maybe what you were led to believe you should be like, and that you are who you are and you like that, and that's okay. And you embrace that. That is what you can do through the power of stories like this. And so I really love seeing it play out in this fantastical, hilarious way.
Hilarious. And this movie is so funny.
It is so funny.
It is so funny and genuine and just wonderful. So they realize that there isn't going to be enough to get. They trip her, the giant panda, and they all realize that May is not enough to pull her back into the circle and do this. So Grandma and the 4 aunts decide to help. And so they all smash their talismans that have been hanging on to their pandas for this whole time. And it's a magical girl transformation sequence like you would get in any anime or Sailor Moon, where they all sparkle and they all like poof and turn into pandas, and they're all awesome and powerful. Like one is even doing like fly splits. Like it's great.
I love it.
And like Grandma Panda actually has like markings on her shoulder. Yeah. And they all start to pull the panda, but they also get the heart song going at the same time. So her friends, her spiritual family, start to sing along, and that convinces the 4 Town boys to put on an impromptu like a cappella concert.
Yep.
And the heart song of Maylin is what's filling the stadium, in addition to Grandma's heart song, the like clinking sound.
Traditional song, yeah.
Yeah, the traditional song. So it's like, it's the integration of these 2 parts of Maylin together in the same heart song, which allows her to finally heal her family.
Oh.
What? I love it. It's amazing. This movie does actually get me quite misty, and emotional. Like it gets it on so many levels, both overt and, subtle.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And it repeats the symbols, and it repeats the messaging, and it says that sometimes it's not enough to heal yourself. You also have to try to heal your community and your family.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, because you know what it is? It's because she was deprived of the knowledge that she could have had that would have helped her through this phase. So now that she has learned something new, she's going to share that. She's not going to deprive the people that she loves of the knowledge and these revelations that she has. She's going to make sure to share it with them. And I love that.
And that's, from a hero's journey perspective, the elixir.
The elixir. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And so she finds her mother in the wild place, the forest, right?
As a child.
Well, as a maybe late teen, because this is when she met Jin, right? This is when she wanted to be with Jin. And she finds her, and she holds her hand and walks her back to the inner goddess, to the wild mother.
Yes, she guides her through the forest, to the wild mother. And I just, okay, this is the part that gets me emotional, just because the idea of the healing her is the acknowledging that the wound occurred in childhood, in these transitional phases, and recognizing her, seeing herself, hearing her say the same thing she had said, I'm never going to be good enough for my mother. Oh, wow. You know what that feels like too. And, it's so important. So then, the way that she leads her through there, and her mother, ages back into herself. And I just love it.
It's important for her to recognize, she hurt her mother. Malin hurt her mother, moving away from her. But that's part of this. You're not going to be able to not hurt those around you that you love.
Yes.
In your messiness, you just have to try to do your best to ask for forgiveness and say your truth.
Yeah. Yeah. It's.
And she also says, her mom, she says, "I'm sorry" to grandma. And grandma's like, "You don't have to say sorry. You're my daughter."
Right. Yes. Yeah. And that goes back to that whole, for all the hurt that's occurred, ultimately it's no, your family, you're my mother, you're my daughter. It's, forgiveness comes easily and quickly. And I think that's so important. And then the way that, she ends with that sort of a little blessing, really. And she says, may Sun Yi, what does she say? She says, may Sun Yi guide you and keep you safe. So she's saying, I commend you to the spirit of the wild mother, basically, is what she's saying. She's saying, I trust your instincts to guide you because I no longer can. And that's really what she's saying. And this is what each generation has to do, is they have to be willing to allow the next generation to, be guided on their own by their own instincts. And that, you're not always just going to imitate your elders.
Exactly. And the world that Maylin is growing up in is so significantly different than the worlds that any of the other generations grew up in. Right. And so that has to be acknowledged, that they have to make it their own, and they have to go on their own journeys, and they have to walk their own path, because the world will be different for them. Oh, I am missing some sort of slide. Oops. I'm missing the one with the mom who goes back on her journey, but do you want to talk about it here?
Yeah, we can talk through it.
Yeah, she basically, her mom also offers her to kind of come back with her. And again, this is the successful third disappointment. She has to not go back. This is the final reconfirmation third moment.
No, I'm not coming with you. No, I'm not going to follow that path. I'm going to follow my own path. And at this point, the mother accepts it. So they're standing in the mirror on opposite sides of the mirror. The mother passes through, and she looks back. Basically, are you coming? May says no. And and the mother accepts it, and they go on. And there's a follow-up to this, which I'm excited to get into, but it is just a beautiful and important scene. It's such a wonderful use of all of the motifs that we've seen so far. And it's really, I just love it so much. And also notice that, May, she's in the pink now. Again, she's really embracing the red completely here.
Exactly. And she is filled with this truth or destiny that she fundamentally accepts and understands who she is and can stand up to anyone who, I guess, would deny her of that. There is no point any longer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's all it's all sort of culminates in Sun Yi appearing, turning into a panda and saying, you're a goddess now too. You have the internal panda in you.
Yeah. She ascends. She raises her up. And it's just wonderful.
Visually. And just, this is special because this is like a culmination of the journey for May and proves she is the true, I guess, like heir to Sun Yi, and exactly what Sun Yi always wanted for her family. To understand their wild nature and their wild womanness and embrace it.
Yeah. And this is it. This is them rediscovering and embracing their heritage.
Exactly. And this leads us to the end, right? Which is the wild self unification. You are the wild woman.
Mm-hmm.
And your inner and outer forces are truthfully combined, and you are who you are. And we get a reintroduction to Maylin ever since, I turned 13. Things have been a little crazy. People still remember and talk about Pandapocalypse 2002, where they destroyed where the Jays play the Sky Dome. It's awesome.
Yeah. And we call it growing pains.
In my family, we call this growing pains. But we get this moment where we have the mom and the daughter kind of redoing their family traditions, but the panda is now integrated and part of it. And the wild is accepted and loved in this and is appreciated. We just wanted to talk briefly about the mom, and I had to grab a screenshot of it because it's so quick, but she's playing because she had to put her panda into the little Neopet that Robert Jr.
I love it.
And that May had previously, because they had to have a talisman to put it in. They didn't have a lot of options, and the other ones are really funny. But this one you wanted to talk about a lot.
I did. This just is so interesting to me, and it really jumped out to me. Like at first, it just seems like just a cute little thing. Oh, look, she put it in the little like virtual pet. Isn't that cute? But like, what does it mean? It means she's not suppressing it. She's not denying it. She is nurturing it. Yeah. She's caring for it constantly. So she's taken, this wild nature, which she denied for so long. And now, even though she can't wear it in the same way that May does openly, because of just her circumstances in life and everything, she is being sure to nurture it all the time, constantly. And so the wild woman is there, is with her, is embraced, is part of her. And I just think that's amazing.
Yeah. And, Dr. E will talk about how this phase is about walking the walk and talking the talk and being exactly who you purport to be. But in some ways, we're not always able to live the wild on the outside. And so we visit the wild in our dreams or in part of our daily rituals, or we embrace these aspects of ourselves and give ourselves space to embrace the wildness of ourselves. And this is a really amazing symbol and example of how she feeds her wild nature and cares for it, even though it's hungry all the time. May also is planning on going out with her friends at the end. Is kind of like, I've done my responsibility. I can also have time with my friends. And she transforms, but keeps her ears and her tail, which, would be just, a thing. I remember this.
It's such an anime girl thing.
It is. It absolutely is. And her mom's like, you're not going out like that. And she's like, my panda, my choice.
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
It's so cute.
This is so important because this is like, power over yourself as a woman, and what you wear and how you behave is also like part of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and goes back to the idea of like, a huge part of, this transition is that you come to the point of, no, like I've taken ownership of this, and accepting who I am means that, I control it. It's mine. It belongs to me, and it's expressed in the way that I want. And so I really love it. I especially love it because it does feel like a little bit of a dig at people that, thought that this kind of expression, this anime girl thing that you see here, because there were people that wore ears and tails and stuff when I was a kid. That was actually a thing. And they always got made fun of. They always got mocked. And I love that this is like, no, this is awesome. This is her being who she wants to be, and it's embraced, and we love it.
Exactly.
And both of her families, both of her packs accept this.
Yep, exactly. And so she goes off and she acknowledges, like, she's going off, but she also, you can't stay the same forever. And the story actually ends on her talking about how we all have this inner beast who's messy and hidden away. And a lot of us never let it out. But I did. How about you? And that's that is the moral of this whole story. And also women who run with the wolves. Dr. E tells us, like, we have to find the time to do this. And like Dr. E talks about, this is a quote from her: women across the world, your mother, my mother, you and I, your sister, your friend, our daughters are all tribes of women not yet met. We have a dream of what is lost. We must rise from the unconscious. We dream of the archetype of the wild woman. We dream of the reunion with that. We are born and reborn every night after night with the same wild dream. We return to daylight, grasping at coarse hairs, soles of our feet black with damp earth, and our hair smelling like the ocean or a forest or a cooking fire. This is calling to us. And so what I want to say is, if this story resonated with you, seek out more of this, because it's healing you in some way, or it's giving you something to hang on to, or a language to talk about your experience that you might have gone through while watching this, watching Turning Red.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think reclaiming the wild part of ourselves is something that is so valuable for everyone. And you know what? I would almost argue this is a moment for us, a moment for us to do this as a society. And the reason I say that is because, as we've all seen over the last few years, the structures that have underpinned our culture for a very, like popular Western culture for a very long time are shaky. They're starting to crumble. We are starting to see, that maybe these things aren't what we thought they were, in ways in which they can be toxic, they can be unhealthy. And so a lot of us are kind of going, well, all these things that I believed in my whole life, they're not what I thought they were. I feel betrayed. I feel that what I relied on for my identity is no longer there, or is no longer trustworthy. And so there's a lot of people that are looking for truth now. And part of the way that you're going to find it is by listening to your instinctive self, the wild self. It has that truth that you're looking for. And that is what this story is about. So I think that it's a really important moment for a story like this.
It absolutely is. And this has been an absolute joy to talk about. Other than Women Who Run with the Wolves, which I highly recommend. It is dense, small type, very thick, a lot to digest, but I really do recommend it if you're looking for more resources. But also, you can check out the podcast Women in Mythology by Maria Sosa. She actually is going through the archetypes and the stories right now. I think she's only on the Ugly Duckling right now, but she actually does a retelling of the story and then talks about it from the, Women Who Run with the Wolves, Dr. E perspective.
And that can be a great way to experience this, by the way, because even though I highly recommend the book and I really enjoy it, it's also just like, it's some serious labor to get through this book. It's like I am going so slow because I have to stop and really think about every single paragraph. And that's like a really exhausting way to get through any book, especially like such a long one. So I think that, and especially since so much of it is about oral folklore, I do think there's a lot of value in hearing it in an audio format. So I definitely recommend this. I recommend, audiobook versions of the book that Dr. E herself reads or speaks.
Yeah, exactly. And hearing the folklore and the tales out loud resonates just such in a different way. So highly recommend that. This was so much fun, Missy. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. I'm so glad you were willing to do this with me. It was just like such a weird thing. I was like, so this like weird movie about this girl who turns into a panda sounds like a fun thing to talk about.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
But where can people find you if they're looking for you?
Okay, well, you can find me for the moment on Twitter at fangirling only, FANGIRLLING, fangirling _only with a 0 in place of the O. And you can also find me on Tumblr at All Girls Are Princesses. And I am, just for the record, kind of in the process of moving a lot more of my content to Tumblr, depending on what happens with the Elon apocalypse here. We'll see. But yeah, for the moment, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. And you can find me on Twitter at Marie C. Gould or at WT Force Media for all updates to do with this sort of stuff that we talk about. If you're interested in Star Wars, you can, of course, check out Star Wars stuff at What the Force Show, which Missy is also available on a bunch of episodes that we talk about cool mythology stuff as it relates to Star Wars. So thanks everyone for checking out our Turning Red deep dive as it relates to the Wild Woman archetype. Cheers.